These are just aspects of the theater industry that I wish could be addressed a little bit more. Hello folks, welcome to another episode of TenorVision with yours truly, T. If you are new to our content, Opera Cecilia is a company run by and for emerging artists seeking to take opera to places it has rarely, if ever, been, in addition to carving out a new space for the opera industry. Today, we will be reviewing the 2022 film Tick, Tick, Boom, prominently directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda and featuring Andrew Garfield. Commence the synopsis! Starving artist Jonathan Larson contemplates the looming approach of his 30th birthday and defines the success of his life on the discovery of his nearly decade-long project, Superbia, a musical composed with artistic nuance beyond what anyone else besides him can see. Buckling under self-induced pressure, he manages to severely damage the two relationships he most cares about: best friend, ex-roommate, and girlfriend, background girl. But it was worth it for the art, right? And now a word from our sponsors. Oh, we don't have sponsors for this video. I guess this video is just sponsored by the kindness of my heart. This movie draws very heavily from its source material. The actual semi-autobiographical musical with the same name. I say semi-autobiographical because there were some artistic liberties taken. You know, you don't want to let the truth get in the way of a good story. Am I right? I really took this to heart as a little fourth grader when I was given a prompt during a writing test or something to write about a true narrative that happened to you. And I ended up writing about a non-existent bank robbery that I ended up surviving. I hope this doesn't invalidate my high school diploma. The movie is structured as a flash-forward narrative, where we spend the majority of the time in the past, as the musical's sequences provide a sort of background or score to the action. I hesitate to say flashback structure because of the amount of time that we spend in each time frame and how blatantly unself-aware the main character is, and the fact that he just doesn't comment on what happened in the past. So we open up with a home video vibe, like a 4:3 aspect ratio on the screen pretty much, a reference to the actual footage that is shown as the credits roll. Not really sure why. I guess it sort of makes us feel more connected to the journey of the protagonist if we see home video footage. Shortly after that, we come up against some of the first comments that made me take a step back and think about life a little bit. This I have some beef with. The idea that by 30, my parents had already had 2 kids and a mortgage, and here I am, my 30th birthday is Sunday, and my youth is ending. I'm really sick of hearing the narrative that your life ends or should have already started by 30. Who was it that put into our heads that at 30 some switch turns on and all of a sudden we know exactly how to adult? That we will be fully fledged and have everything that we've ever wanted, including personal growth. So basically, the game ends at 30 and the post-game is post-30 and the rest means diddly squat. Just coast from there and live a really sad life. No! Let's stop this toxic narrative that your life ends at 30 and your 20s are the only time you get to do what you want. Goodness gracious, just strive to keep growing past your 30s. Don't just give up. Then he goes and compares himself to his idol and pressures himself by saying Sondheim had published his first musical by 27. Yeah, that's his timeline. Let's skip the comparison game. All it does is damage your psyche. I will stop here, however, and commend the writing of the movie, as infuriating as it was to watch. I couldn't help but appreciate that all of the problems were brought on by the protagonist himself. Jonathan Larson, by the way. The whole man versus self narrative really speaks to the self-defeating nature that we can have as people.
I don't feel called out. You do.
Next up, we have background girl talking with him about quitting his job in anticipation of a musical workshop for Superbia he has coming up, which he's convinced it'll be his big break, but she is concerned. To defend his position, John says,
well, it's expensive to make art.
No, baby, it's expensive to make art here.
He is living in New York City. I could go off on my own tangent, but honestly, I think it's explained more succinctly by my spouse. If you look at the link in the description, I will link to her video where she breaks down 5 other cities besides New York that are great for the arts. Shortly hereafter, we have the first song of Tick Tick Boom that we see in this movie, Happy Birthday. This is the first time we actually hear Andrew Garfield sing, and I'm happy to hear that he did spend a ton of time, that being 1 year, plus a little bit of time due to the state of the world, in which he dedicated himself with vocal coaches and Lin-Manuel Miranda himself to bring the character of Jonathan Larson to life. Andrew Garfield did. As far as the singing is concerned, I think he did fairly well given the circumstances. It's a bit more of a heady sound that he's producing. It's not quite Broadway, not quite pop. You still can see the sternocleidomastoid tension when he's singing, but hey, apparently it was fairly accurate to the real world John, who wasn't the best trained singer.
Don't panic, don't jump ship, can't fight it like taxes. At least it happens only once in your life.
Don't panic, don't jump ship, you can't fight it like taxes. At least it happens only once in your life.
His talents lied mostly in writing musicals, which we honestly need more people to have that ability. Another toxic subject broached in this movie came when Jonathan Larson straight up accused his ex-roommate of selling out when he stopped pursuing his artistic dream and turned it in for a high 5 figures job with a 401k and health insurance. He stopped pursuing his dream of being an actor. Can we stop this? If we are artists, we are not bound to define our personalities on just one thing. People get flack for making their entire personalities about one particular part of themselves, such as their looks or being a stay-at-home mom. Just stop it. We have to realize that people are an amalgamation of their hobbies, their relationships, their interests, where they live. Michael, the ex-roommate, goes on to have a rant about this later. But really, stop putting people into boxes. You know who has a better outlook on life? Susan, the background girl. I say that not because I think she's a valid character, but because that's kind of the role that she plays in this film. It's explained that Susan loved to dance and that she was really up there. She was on the verge of becoming one of the greatest dancers, and then she gets an ankle injury and it completely kind of kills the potential for her career, at least in Jonathan's eyes. But she keeps on dancing because she loves to do it, and it still remains a part of her. She can't necessarily dance the way that she used to, but she's still doing the thing. Honestly, Susan was so much more mentally healthy than John. It just wasn't going to work for them from the beginning. The next scene over, we have Michael and John driving in a car, and Michael is suggesting that he use his great skills to sell or produce jingles for his advertising firm, to which Jonathan gets offended by this because his friend wants him to use his skills to not starve to death and provides him with an opportunity to do so. Honestly, John's friends are so much better than him. And next up, we have a musical number inspired by Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George. We have a stressful brunch at the diner that Jonathan's working at. There's a whole bunch of subpar customers that are not being gracious to the staff, and Jonathan's way of coping with this is to disengage. So he sings about Sunday brunch. We get some real fantasy vibes of how he wants his life to be, and his psyche is really showing cracks as the pressure looms. So this entire time, he's struggling to write an Act 2 song, a very pivotal moment in his musical Superbia, about this woman character that is supposed to sing and connect the emotional through line to help the protagonist, male character, kind of get his shit together, for lack of better words. We get scenes with him in this dark, overwhelming feeling where he feels like he needs to visit his friend in the hospital. He's pulled in the direction of wanting to fix the relationship with Michael after they had that fight. And eventually he has to talk to Susan about the job that she says that she's been offered in a completely different part of the country. And he keeps thinking to himself, but I can't talk to Michael, and I can't go visit my friend, and I can't talk to Susan yet, but I have to talk to Susan because I don't have time. I have to write the song because the workshop is tomorrow. This is when Susan walks into the apartment, and she needs to talk about how he has ghosted her this entire time. During this dialogue sequence, there's a cute little Easter egg to Sondheim's A Little Night music, when she says, "When is later?" a song sung by Henrik in A Little Night music, which I actually picked up on because I sang that song in college. So the thing with this fight is that they both have a legitimate argument. John is overworked, he's overwhelmed, and he doesn't have the brain space to really handle all of these things that life is throwing at him in the moment. And Susan feels like their relationship is on the back burner. Her needs are not being met. John is horrible at communicating. And let me tell you, I've been married for almost 4 years now. And if you don't give the grace to allow your partner to have really difficult moments and give them the space to be able to mentally prepare for a lot of those difficult and overwhelming parts of life, the relationship isn't going to work out very well. If you truly love a person, you will figure out a way to make it work. You will find a compromise. In this life, we have to make choices about how we want our life to look like. And sometimes we have to make those compromises to figure out the timing. And if the person isn't fitting into the compromise, sometimes it's just better to say goodbye. So they reach some sort of catharsis until Susan freaks out that John is composing something while he's hugging her after they make up. And, you know, the two characters may have addressed their relationship issues a little bit here, but Jonathan himself hasn't reached any catharsis with all of the other background things that are happening in his life. The stress of writing that musical, the feeling that he can't go visit his friends because he doesn't have the time. And I agree, it was not the most considerate thing for him to be processing his feelings in song form as music started to come to him and he was completely in that different space. But when you create, oftentimes it's about processing your emotions. It's a form of self-expression. And sometimes we can't help but write about what we know, which is what Jonathan's agent, Rosa, was saying all along. If you are familiar with Rent the Musical and see this movie, you won't believe the parallels. He really took her advice to heart. It's really too bad that he didn't get to see how big Rent the Musical turned out to be. Ironically enough, he had an aortic aneurysm that ended his life before the show was put in front of Broadway producers. So after the fight, the muse strikes him while he's taking a late night swim. He finishes the pivotal song of Act 2 literally the night before his musical was supposed to go in front of the workshop. It just goes to show, if any of you out there in the ether know, Mozart himself oftentimes could be found writing parts to the overture just before the curtain was about to rise. So not a lot has changed in the millennia of artistry. So he gets a pretty good-sized crowd coming to his workshop. Even Stephen Sondheim, his favorite composer, celebrity composer, showed up. And he hears from his agents later that every single person loved it. They thought it was great. They thought it was very promising, but no one picked it up. No one's going to produce it. Why? Because the cast is too big. It's too expensive to put on. It's just not what the audiences want at the moment. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't make any money, and if it costs too much, these are just aspects of the theater industry that I wish could be addressed a little bit more. This leads John to come crawling back to his ex-roommate Michael and asking him if he can take back his rejection of that job suggestion that was given to him, saying, you know, I want the 401k, I want the health insurance, I want this beautiful apartment that you have. He talks about how tired he is of Broadway just churning out the same substance-less things with lack of substance. He talks about how he feels like he's running out of time, and Michael says, you know, you're not really running out of time because I have HIV. Really helps put things into perspective for John. This whole time he's freaking about his 30th birthday coming up that weekend and him not having achieved anything. And here comes his best friend, Michael, who tells him straight up that he's got a disease that at the time had no cure and very little treatment. Their heart-to-heart is interrupted by a phone call, so Michael ends up kicking him out. And this gives them each some space to musically process their feelings. John breaks into some sort of stadium and finds a piano. It starts raining. It's very artistic. It really bothered me that he didn't protect the piano from the rain, but you know what? Artistic liberties, right? However, at this particular moment, the song Hey, What a Day to Spend the Day is actually very touching, and it did a very good job of capturing that feeling that a lot of artists get when they're first introduced to art, be it painting or acting, singing, whatever it may be. This song did such a good job of capturing that moment where you think to yourself, hey, this is really cool. I would like to do this for the rest of my life. This happens while John is reminiscing about him and Michael growing up, doing theater in elementary school, in high school, and Michael being the non-singing part. So Sunday comes around and Michael and John have a heart-to-heart. They make up. They're friends again. Susan drops by and leaves him a gift before officially breaking up with them. They actually part amicably. And then John blows out the candles to his cake, and I'm not entirely clear what his wish was. It implied that he made a wish, but I really don't know what it is. Does he wish that his musical would be successful? The next one that he writes would be successful? Because if it is, then he didn't really have a lot of character growth, if any. So in short, there are many themes that this movie touches on. It does a really good job of resonating with artists. The themes of blatant procrastination, overcommitment, feeling overwhelmed, struggling to find work that pays, feeling insecure about your artistry, and more than that. So I will commend the film on that. As far as the acting is concerned, I'm not the biggest fan of Andrew Garfield's skater boy punk dude energy, but he was decent enough. He portrayed an overwhelmed, mentally unhealthy individual respectfully, and he got an Oscar nomination for it, so what do I know? If I had to score it, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It was a little bit hard to follow personally. It was entertaining at the very least, and it had some very good moments. But as far as the music is concerned, I was not the biggest fan of it. But let me know in the comments, how wrong am I? Did it completely blow your mind? Please subscribe to this channel, like the video, comment down below your own personal opinions about this movie. And until next time, see you then.